I often browse eBay and similar selling sites, not looking for anything in particular, but just to see if there's anything interesting on there. And I was having one of these browsing sessions a couple of weeks ago, and I came across this thing for sale in the US. It's a TEAC CR-310 10-channel communications recorder, and the thing that piqued my interest in this item particularly was that it records onto a VHS video cassette. And I was intrigued to find out how it uses that tape. Does it have a helical scanning rotary head like a video recorder, or does it, as I suspect, record 10 linear tracks across the width of the tape? I did a bit of web searching on these, but I could find very little information. But after a lot of hunting around, I did manage to turn up a PDF of a sales brochure and an instruction manual for this device. It seems that there were two models in the range, the CR-310, which I have here, 10-channel unit, and what seems to have been the more popular CR-320, 20-channel unit. And from what I can gather, these things were mainly used by emergency services to record phone calls to the emergency services call centre, and probably also the radio communications between the dispatch staff and the actual response vehicles, for evidential purposes mainly, I think. According to the brochure, these can record for over 24 hours continuously on one, supposed to be an SVHS tape, and to achieve that they run the tape at a remarkably slow speed of just 4.18 millimeters per second. So that's less than half a centimetre per second. So if this machine uses linear tracks, as I suspect it does, then the audio quality is going to be terrible. But for the application that these things were used for, sound quality isn't that important really. As long as the voices can be understood, that's all that matters. And in fact the frequency response is quoted in here as 300 Hz to 3 kHz, so hi-fi it isn't. TEAC did make a few other similar devices. On eBay I found a CR-120, which looks like a dual deck front-loading, or slot-loading I should say, VHS-based machine, and a CR-500, which looks from the pictures as though it records onto some type of disc, but I'm not quite sure what type of disc that is. Let me know in the comments if you can recognise that disc type. Now, this machine came from the US, so obviously it's going to run on 120 volts, but according to the brochure there was a 240 volt option. So maybe internally there's an option to switch it to 240 volt operation, but that would be nice. But for now I think I'll just power it through a step-down transformer. The mains frequency doesn't seem to matter to it, so we shouldn't have any speed issues. Not that that would matter really anyway, because I haven't got any tapes with existing recordings on for this machine. Unfortunately, although the original eBay listing for this item clearly stated and showed pictures to prove that it included the keys and a user manual, sadly when this unit turned up with me, neither of those items were included, and I can't get any response from the seller. I've contacted them several times, they're just not answering my queries. So whether they just forgot to put those items in, or whether this thing has been opened at some point in transit and those items have got lost, I don't know. But either way, I don't have the keys, which means I'm going to have to sort of hotwire the key switch, I think, to get it going. But first thing I'll do is just connect it to mains power and see if anything at all happens. I doubt it will until I turn this power key or hotwire it. Anyway, let's give it a try. Right, here we go. Let's power up. It's drawing some current because I can hear the transformer humming a bit. But as expected, no life at all, so we're going to have to hotwire the switch, I think. Now, it looks like there's a hinge down here, so I think this front panel hinges out. So probably if we undo these two screws here, this whole front panel, which is made of solid metal incidentally, not plastic, will hinge out this way hopefully. So let's try that. Yes, there we go, look at that. Now, there's the deck mechanism. Some plug-in cards here by the looks of it. Let's make sure they're all nicely pushed in. Mechanism over here. Now, can we get at that key switch? And the answer is yes, we can. That is the key switch there. This cable is slightly in the way. but we can get at the switch. I think probably the easiest thing to do is if I flip the whole machine up onto its side, or perhaps even turn it upside down, might be able to get better access to that switch and see how it's wired. Yes, that's now much easier to see the key switch in there. Okay, I've hot-wired the key switch, at least I think I have, so hopefully if I now power the machine up it should just come straight on, hopefully not in lock mode. So let's close this back up and flip the machine over. I won't bother to put the screws in yet because I don't know if it's going to work yet. Let's power up the transformer, turn off the heater so we can hear what's going on, and plug in. Here we go, moment of truth. Yes, we have a clock display. Can we eject? Yes, eject works, and I can now see the heads. Okay, apologies for shaky cam. Hopefully you can see now down in there, there's two very wide, what look like to be 20 track heads to me. So presumably one will be an erase head and one will be a record head. So it looks like this machine could actually relatively easily be upgraded to a 20 track model, because it's got the heads for 20 tracks in there. That's working nicely. But anyway, let's see if we can set the clock. Oh, actually, I was fiddling around with these earlier on and I've actually set them to more or less the correct time, but the date is correct, but what is the time now? Let's have a look. It's 1926, near enough. 26. So now I assume I have to press that time set with a pen or something. Let's find a pen. And that should set the clock, I hope. Oh, that's not, I don't think that's going in far enough. I need something narrower. Maybe a small screwdriver? Let's try a small screwdriver. Yes, there we go. 1926, 24th of the 3rd, 19th of the 3rd, 24. I was reading the date backwards. Anyway, oh look, why has the counter gone up? Anyway, we can reset that. That's the remain. Now, do we get anything if we... Yes. We're getting a hum from the speakers. So presumably that's monitoring the inputs at the moment. I assume that's monitoring the inputs. Shall I try putting a tape in? Trouble is, the only tapes I've got have obviously got video recordings on, so if I put a tape in and try and play it, we'll probably get some kind of noise coming through, I would imagine. Let's try that. Well, it's laced up, hasn't it? So what happens if you push play? It's running. And predictably, we're just getting noise on all the channels. That sounds like it's actually playing the control track on the tape. But look how slowly the tape's moving. Oh, got some alarms coming up here now. Oh, rewind doesn't work. No, it's struggling to rewind. Fast forward seems to work though. Right. I think next thing is work out how to get an input into this so we can actually make a recording on it. So unplug it for the time being and I'll spin it round and we'll have a look at the back. Okay, I've put the 2 screws back in just to hold the front panel closed. So round the back we've got a grounding post marked FG, the mains power input, a 3.2 amp 250 volt fuse, which is actually marked up for 2 amp 250 volts, so that's a slightly overrated fuse. We've got this aux contact thing here, which I'm not quite sure what's for. These 2 IDC connectors, this one's labelled direct in and this one IF out. I think they're to do with sort of stacking multiple machines together, as is this serial operation connector down here. I think that's just so you can have sort of longer term recording or more than 10 or more than 20 channels by using multiple machines. We've also got a remote control 25-way D connector here, which is presumably for some kind of wired remote. An alarm and tape remain connector here, which is probably for some kind of external alarm or tape remain display or something like that, I don't know. We've also got an intriguing blanking plate here, which I'll have a look behind in a minute, but the main one I'm interested in is this input connector, which looks like a male, well, what I tend to call a Centronics type connector. I'm not sure what the proper name for that type of connector is, but it looks a lot wider than the type you'd normally get on a printer, parallel printer. I'm not sure if I've got a connector that'll fit that. I'll have to have a look, but that's probably where all the analog inputs are going to be. Don't think there's any analog outputs. I think the only way to get an output is either via the built-in speaker or from the monitor port on the front. So let's just have a little look behind this blanking plate, see what's in there. Aha! Now that would be for an output connector, which is not fitted on this model. Now there is a ribbon cable behind there, so I wonder... I don't want to start tugging cables and things, but I wonder if it's possible to retrofit an output connector on there and whether that would give us all of the 10 output channels from the tape. Don't know, interesting. Anyway, let's put that back. So, let's see if I've got a connector that will fit that input port. Well, fairly remarkably, I did actually manage to find an old SCSI cable which has the right connector on this end. It has these flanges, which we don't need, but it does actually fit nicely into that connector on the back of the communications recorder. However, I don't really want to butcher this cable, just in case I ever need it for something else. Fairly unlikely, but just in case I do ever want that cable, I don't really want to mess with that. So I did buy a brand new female micro ribbon connector with solder terminals. I've also done a little bit more web searching, and I turned up a forum post from someone who had actually contacted TEAC and asked them for the pinouts of this input connector, and it seems that the top row of pins starting from the left are the inputs and the bottom row of pins are the corresponding ground pins for those inputs. So the first 2 terminals on this end will be input 1, the next 2 terminals along will be input 2, and so on and so on. They also said that the inputs are designed to accept a standard consumer line level input, so in theory I should be able to connect something like a CD player or something directly to these pins and we should be able to record that. But first of all, let's get this open and we'll test that theory by just seeing if we can get a signal through in the E2E monitoring mode on each of those pins and make sure they correspond with the channel numbers as that forum post said. Yep, that's gone in nicely, so that gives me, yeah, really nice access to those pins. So what I'll probably do is I'll just power the thing up in monitor mode without a tape in it, select input 1 say, and then just touch these pins and see if we get a hum through the speaker. So let's try that. Connect the power, right way up would help, wouldn't it? And turn on the transformer. So the unit's now on. So if I select channel 1 to monitor, I'll put the volume up on maximum. Now if I touch the first pin on here, hopefully we should get a hum through the speaker. I'll touch it with a screwdriver just to make it a bit easier. Yep, and the second pin is not giving anything at the moment. So if I now turn off track 1 and monitor track 2, the second pin in on here should give us a hum. which it does, and the first pin doesn't. Yeah, so that theory looks to be correct, doesn't it? So tell you what, let's turn the gain down a bit and we'll monitor on all the channels, right up to 10. And we'll just go along and touch all these pins, make sure we get hum through each one. So, channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, channel 4, channel 5 isn't, channel 6, channel 7, channel 8, channel 9, channel 10, and then the rest would be for the 20 track unit. Was it channel 6? No. Seems to be channel 5. It's making a little bit of a click when I touch it, but not as much as the other channels. Let's just turn all the other channels off, apart from 5. And we'll turn the gain right up to full again, and we'll try channel 5 again. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is working, but it seems to be a bit lower level than the others. So yes, those pinouts do appear to be correct, don't they? So that's a good thing. So what I'll probably do now is get some wires soldered onto these, and I can try feeding a proper audio input into it. So let's power down for now. And I will unplug this and we'll get some wires soldered on. Okay, so we now have what should be channels 1 and 2 coming out to 2 phono plugs. So the white one is wired into channel 1 and the red one's wired into channel 2. Let's just power up and test that. So power on. And we'll monitor channels 1 and 2. Let's see if we get the hum from these. Yep. Let's just double check, so we'll turn off monitor on 2. So we're now monitoring only channel 1. Correct. And flip them over, so we're now monitoring only channel 2. Yeah, correct. So, power off, and I'll spin this thing round and connect this to something else. Okay, we're all hooked up to this DVD and video recorder combi unit. I've got the left and right audio outputs from this connected to channels 1 and 2 on the communications recorder, and I'm monitoring channels 1 and 2. First thing I'm going to try is this disc, which just has a 3 kHz sine wave. So if I play this disc, hopefully we should get a 10 kHz sine wave coming through the speaker. Warning, nasty tone coming up if you don't like that sort of thing. Mute audio now. Yep, that seems to be working absolutely fine. Good. So, shall we try it with some proper audio? Actually, before I try with some proper audio, I'll try recording that tone onto a VHS tape on this machine and see if it can play it back. If that works, I'll put a proper CD with some music on it in there and we'll record that across, see what the quality's like. So first of all, I'll just put a new blank, I think I'll treat it to a brand new tape, just put a new blank VHS tape in there and record that tone, see what we get. This is a brand new VHS tape, it's an E240. Right, new blank tape in, counter reset, audio coming through on both channels. Let's start recording. In fact, if I take this cover off, we can see how slow the tape's moving. Interestingly, I think we've lost. We seem to have lost the input signal, don't we? We have lost the input signal for some reason. Let's just stop the recording. It's coming through in monitor mode. Oh, I bet I know why it is, because this is now giving us the confidence playback from the tape, isn't it? So what we're hearing is the playback of the tape, and it can't resolve that frequency of signal. So I think I need to play some proper audio through, don't I? Let's get a CD that's actually got some music on it. That'll be a better test, won't it? Okay, got a music CD here. So it's a commercial one, but I've got a suspicion the quality is going to be sufficiently poor that we're not going to need to worry about content matches. So we'll take that out and we'll put the music CD in. What I'll do is I'll reset the counter so we know where we are, and we'll start playing the music CD. I think we'll skip to track 2 because track 1 starts off fairly quietly, so I'll just jump it onto track 2. So that's actually the signal being recorded onto tape by the first head and then replayed by the second head. So it's actually the off-tape audio that you're hearing. But if I stop the recording, we should hear the direct E to E loop through. So let's try that. That's it just coming straight through the recorder, not going to tape. That's now the off-tape recording. Now then, if I stop recording, I think the issue I'm going to have here is I don't think this machine is capable of rewinding the tape, is it? I tried that before. Oh, go on, you can do it. Go on. Only got to get back to 0, then we can play the tape again. Go on. Right, get to 0. There. I shall now give you a direct hookup from this monitor out connector here. Bear in mind you won't be hearing stereo because we're just hearing tracks 1 and 2 monitored simultaneously, so they'll just be mixed together on the monitor output. But you'll now hear the direct output from that monitor out port. Well, that was interesting, but it wasn't really a fair test, was it? Because these machines aren't designed for reproducing music, they're designed for reproducing speech. So what I'm going to do now is I'll play in some relatively high quality spoken word from a CD. It's actually a recent speech by our esteemed Prime Minister. What I'll do is I'll leave it recording, but what you'll be hearing is the off-tape signal because it'll be from the confidence head. So although it's in record mode, and you'll be hearing the output from this monitor out connector, you're actually hearing the off-tape signal, so you'll hear what the playback of the tape would be like. I will just reset the counter just so we know where we were, and I shall play that speech in now and you'll be able to see what the quality is like. So here we go.
Well, thank you and good morning, everyone. Today I'd like to talk about the growing number of people who've become economically inactive since the pandemic, and the moral mission of reforming welfare to give everyone who can the best possible chance of returning to work. Now, the values of our welfare state are timeless. They're part of our national character, of who we are as a country. We're proud to ensure a safety net that is generous to those who genuinely need it and fair to the taxpayers who fund it. We know that there are some with the most severe conditions who will never be able to work, and some who can no longer work because of injury or illness. And they and their loved ones must always have the peace of mind that comes from knowing they will always be supported. But we also have a long-standing and proudly British view that work is a source of dignity, purpose, of hope. The role of the welfare state should never be merely to provide financial support, as important as that will always be, but to help people overcome whatever barriers they might face to living an independent, fulfilling life. Everyone with the potential should be supported, and not just to earn, but to contribute and belong. And we must never tolerate barriers that hold people back from making their contribution and from sharing in that sense of self-worth that comes from feeling part of being something bigger than ourselves. And that is why this is a moral mission, and why the value of work is so central to my vision for welfare reform. And it's
Well, there you go. That was a little bit more of a fair test, wasn't it? Because, yeah, as I say, these things are for speech. They're not for music. So I think that's very easy to understand. No problems with the quality there. Okay, it sounded a bit like it was coming down a telephone line, but that's kind of what you'd expect, really, because this thing tops out at about 3 kilohertz. Considering you can get over 24 hours on one tape of 10 channels, potentially of 20 channels if you've got the 20-channel unit. So there you go. Hope you found that interesting. Thank you very much for watching.
credit to make sure that work always pays. We introduced the national living wage and increased it every year, ending low pay in this country.